Welcome to the Yarn Barn.
Welcome to the Yarn Barn. It's good to have you here. This is obviously the Australian Dads Network podcast. My name's Liam Sorrell. Today's episode features a conversation with myself and James Greenshields, a military veteran, husband, dad, and leader of a movement to impact lives. This episode delves deep into some heavy topics, including suicide and PTSD, so please be aware of this before listening or continuing on. If you do listen and feel triggered by this content, please seek some support, and obviously Lifeline is there on 13 11 14. During this episode, we discuss some key topics, including the 3 givens of life, finding our soul purpose, the burden of having a big heart, feeling pain to its extreme edges, even though it can be very uncomfortable, and the impact of having a tribe and a community that includes significant leaders and elders to support you on your journey. James has an impressive background, and his work has impacted a ton of lives and will continue to do so, and you will get that passion and energy from him in this episode. I can guarantee you that. You can learn more about him on his website at jamesgreenshields.com. So for now, buckle up for an enlightening and thought-provoking conversation. Here we go, in the Yarn Barn with James. Hey, James. Thanks for joining us, mate. Really appreciate your patience, firstly. So obviously all of the effort that we put into getting this recorded won't go to air because we couldn't record it because the first effort we put in didn't work. But, I think actually now thinking of it, and just before I jump over to you, is, I think that's part of, this possibly come up as part of the conversation around, just persevering and resilience. And I think some of these themes that even though they're on a very, very, very minor scale to some of the stuff that you've been through in your journey, I think they're good little lessons for us just to keep sticking through, even when things get it might seem a bit easier to just move away and disregard it or not push through. So little lessons from virtual hiccups. Thanks for sticking around with me. Thanks for being patient, and I appreciate you jumping on and having a chat with us inside the Yarn Barn. And I see you've got your dad mug there as well, which is pretty cool. I noticed that. I'm very observant.
You are.
Thanks, and keep calm and call Dad. That's the cup there.
That's a Father's Day present from a few years ago.
Yeah, nice. So well, let's just start with you. I could do an intro, but I think it's better to come from the person who's sitting on the other side of the screen from me. Just give us the 30,000-foot view of James Greenshields.
Jeepers creepers. Grew up very conservative background. Father, an Anglican priest, a Vietnam veteran, a chaplain to the Army, Police, Country Fire Authority. And the Army, and he's also just a regular priest as well, but he never left the land, so to speak. And Mum, school teacher to a Roman Catholic college for 36 years. She didn't just teach, daughters of mothers. She taught granddaughters of grandmothers, and by that stage, Mum decided she'd been in the one place for too long. Mm-hmm. And grew up on a farm that was south of the Puckapunyal military training area, the largest military training area in Victoria. There's a photo in Mum's house of me standing there at 4 with armoured personnel carriers coming in the back paddock to park up behind the shearing shed, and they were from an organisation called B Squadron 2nd Cavalry Regiment. The next photo is 30 years later of me leading B Squadron 2nd Cavalry Regiment into Iraq for its first wartime deployment. Wow. I grew up around the military, some incredible people coming into the house. Dad was a man of many talents. He was a spiritual portal for so many who didn't actually realise what he was. They just knew that if they went and sought counsel with my father, that they'd find solace, they'd find some form of peace. And he was incredible in diabolical situations. However, if at the age of 16 I didn't want to do the farm work or the cattle work his way in the cattle yards, give me 2 minutes, I'd press every button, he'd fly off in a fit of rage and I wouldn't see him for the rest of the day. Good, because I did it my way and I'm just trying to prove myself. And So a lot of my early interactions with my father were me, like he was my love role model, but he was not my anger, sadness, fear, shame, or guilt role model. And that was because of his traumas from his life, not just Vietnam, what he saw, but overall his life. And so I grew up as a young man trying to gain his approval, gain his love, not realizing that he was giving it to me all the time. And a lot of that was because of the journey of not understanding actually what love was. And that constant need to prove myself, and fighting against being a coward, which led me to charge down 2-ton bulls in the face, in the cattle yards, and Dad just like jaw dropping the floor and just shaking his head going, "Can I show you another way?" And I said, "Yeah, but was it done?" He's going, "Yeah, you're alive, but maybe not next time." And I said, "But the job was done." And, Dad passed 20 years ago. And when he passed, we had become best friends again. By the age of 14, I needed to go to boarding school though, because I couldn't be in his presence without us flying off the handle. And realistically, I grew up in a loving household though. That people would love come to our place, love come to the farm and everything. So to say that I had a traumatic childhood is bullshit. I had a great childhood. I had a lot of freedom on the farm. I'd just go wandering. But there was a lot of stuff inside genetically through my bloodlines, but also soul purpose that came to really make a crescendo. So 17 years in the military after boarding school. Therefore, you could really call me an institutionalized moron because I basically had every conservative paradigm upon me until realistically the age of 33. And by 33, I was a major in the military, given the honour of leading Australian troops into a combat zone. We were Combat Team Eagle as part of a thing called Operational Battle Group West, Overwatch Group West or something. An incredible experience, over 100 soldiers. They were mine within my combat team, but every mission we rolled on, we'd amplify that, at times 250 people. I learned an incredible amount about myself. I had a thirst for it. I had a real desire, real hunger for mastery of it. I was good at it. I had a real passion for my people, my men. You didn't stuff with my men because I was exceedingly protective, and I didn't realise that there was a lot of subconscious archetypes, including the rescuer, that was paramount in that. I like to say I went to war a hero in the archetype, and I didn't come back a warrior. I got blooded, but my warriorship didn't actually transmute until later on in life when I crashed after coming back with post-traumatic stress. Yeah, I was hit by a roadside bomb over in Iraq. Quite a few other things happened. But realistically, the post-traumatic stress came because of a values incongruence where, because I was part of the leadership team in Iraq, we were privy to certain aspects of the mission that we worked out were not necessarily what we'd been told upon deployment. And we were in a war zone and we weren't going home. And we had a job, we had to find a job to do. Realistically, we had to find a job to do. And so that was a real big test in my own fortitude, resilience, and leadership. But coming home, I just really collapsed because the military was everything to me as a young person. It was, and archetypally for me, the military represents the penultimate aspect of the human to protect those that one loves in the mastery of arms, in the mastery of the skill set. And so it speaks professionalism, it speaks honor, virtue, integrity, power, all these things, but done for being of service. And what I was witnessing in the military is there was an incongruence to that. There was a violation of that, which that's about me, not about the military. And so it was a choice. And 12 years ago now, funnily enough, I chose to get out when I was in the height of post-traumatic stress. And so I went suicidal and depressed, sat on the couch, was going to take my own life. But a story about Dad came to me where he said, one day feeding the cattle, there's my God, sweeping a hand across the bush. Now, to an ignorant 8-year-old who didn't understand spirituality, I didn't understand what he meant. But on that day, I realised what he actually meant to me, because he said to me, you've got to go and find your own. And I realised my job wasn't done. I hadn't found my own, and I needed to be lost, so damn lost, where all the fabric of life collapsed. And I got out of the military excelling. I was a high functioning trauma depressive case. So they actually wanted me to stay in and go on the up and up. If I had done that, I'd be looking for a second or a third wife by now. And I like the one I got. So that was a life choice. And it was a great one because I wouldn't have recovered from post-traumatic stress if I had stayed in, because the tribe will only allow you to heal as far as the tribe's capable or willing to. And my father needed to die for me to heal, because I would have looked to him for guardianship, but you can only help a person heal to the level you've healed yourself. And he passed me a gauntlet on Pond Death, which was a gauntlet of trauma and fractured soul. And he said, it's now your job to heal this. So I've gone on to do an incredible amount of work into myself to become, I haven't had a relapse of post-traumatic stress. I don't even go through post-traumatic growth anymore. I mean, it's just something that happened to me. I don't identify myself with it anymore. The only reason why I remember it so much is people ask me to tell the story every now and then. And I've realized, who I am deeply by connecting to spirit, connecting to land, connecting to my genealogy, my bloodline, but even bigger than that, realizing that I aren't that, they're part of my makeup. They're an integral part of my makeup, but I'm something bigger than that. And so this exploration, and I have a thirst for exploration on that type of bloke. And that's served me really, really well in the dark side. But that search for exploration really fuels my fire. So, nowadays I've been running a charity for the last 5 years. We've just let go of the charitable status, just because the vehicle didn't serve the purpose anymore. I don't need people to tell me how to do my job. I know how to help people, and I won't be constrained by people's belief cycles about what's needed when I'm around a campfire, say, with a bunch of men, as I will be next week. They need to go where they need to go, and their souls will tell me where they need to go. And I have the honour of being capable of actually witnessing them do that. I've learned that one heals oneself. Like, I don't heal anyone. I'm just there chaperoning them through this process, amplifying the skills that I've learned, continually working at refining and mastery of those skills. But the biggest thing that I've really learned is about what power this heart has within me. I'm a Leo, and I've had to own how big my heart is, and I had to walk through the arrogance and the narcissistic gateway to be able to own it with humility and honor. And I'm so grateful about my heart and how big it is and what it allows me to connect to, particularly my daughters, my wife, people I love so much. And the only time I'll get emotional about a story out of Iraq is when I talk about my soldiers, because they are amazing people, and what they did back then was truly amazing. So I know that was probably longer than I expected, 30,000 foot look at me, but that's probably, we don't talk about resilience anymore around here. We don't work in resilience. We've gone beyond that, because resilience has become an idolized hero upon itself, misunderstood concept, because you need an adversary for resilience. But what happens when you transcend the need for an adversary and you grow not from fear and resistance, but from love, and you get drawn, which is part of the understanding of the deep, dark feminine, who draws a man out of the boat from the conscious life down into the underworld, to the darkness, to where his heart actually needs to be reborn from. He needs to die in that moment. And that's what my heart's been given to me.
Awesome. That's one of the best introductions to to a podcast episode that I've been involved with. So I appreciate you sharing that from the start. And you may have seen me furiously scribbling notes down, because, this is again one of the beauties of being able to record conversations like this, is that I can go back and listen to them as many times as needed, because there's so much in there. And I think I'm just going to, there's one sort of part of that process that you talked about there that I think I just wanted to start on, because I think it's important, is that you mentioned, we have to go to the edges of our pain, essentially, to be able to, we can't sort of tiptoe around some of the things that have happened in our past. We can't tiptoe around how we're feeling right now. And just, I think a lot of us, a lot of men in particular, will mask some of the pain, or use obviously unhelpful coping mechanisms that have, as a result of a whole range of different history, but also just friendship groups and the circles that they're involved in, that environment that's surrounding them. So how do you, and through your experience, obviously, you've gone into some of the depths of, the darkest pains that, people can encounter. How do you embrace that? Like, how do you encourage guys, or how do you support guys through embracing that level of pain so that they can get to the edges of it, feel it, understand what it's for and how it's there to serve them, and then move beyond that?
That's an epic question. Seriously, that is an epic question.
Thanks.
The answer starts with, for 10 years, I ran a rite of passage program for young people, a youth leadership program based on old rites of passage from around the globe. And I'd often get asked to go first into a school and talk to them. And I'd love talking to about year 11s, something about that age group. And 250 people say we're in an auditorium one day, and the teachers were there. And I'd ask them, so leadership, give me it. What are the maxims? What are the big statements you've heard? First one, always lead by example. And I say, so you know what? Lead by example is fucking bullshit. And you can imagine what a bunch of, this one was Nudgee College in Brisbane, which is an all boys Catholic school. So you can imagine what the audience did, like recoiled. And the young men just go, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. He swore. And it's like, I do that deliberately because I want to shock them into a different thought pattern. I want to wake them up. And the reason why I said it is because I then went on and said, how many times have you seen your parents tell you to do one thing and do another thing? Everyone raises their hand. I said, right. And I knew I had teachers in the room and I wanted to put a shot across their bow. I said, who's seen a teacher do exactly the same? Say one thing, do another. Every hand goes up. Not only that, they're looking around to find out where the teachers are. And some of the teachers are trying to just like become invisible, which is great because they've been called. And therein lies the thing. Like the maxim's true, but the question I ask them is, don't worry about lead by example. What example are you leading by? And as a father, I know that my job for a 17-year-old daughter and a 14 going on 15-year-old daughter, I've got two daughters, is to be an example. But there's an old adage which says the father sits at the dinner table and he knows he must get up and go outside and go beyond to heal the wound. And he sits there with the choice. And one father will get up and leave and go and do the journey. And in doing the journey, he knows that he's leaving the dinner table and leaving his family, but he's doing it for the grander reason. Whereas there's another father who stays at the dinner table and sits there, and the wound is passed to the next generation. I have to be the former. It's just who I am. It's my makeup. I can't deny that anymore. And so my example to my daughters, who one of the biggest leadership roles that I have is being a father, but is also one can't lead if one can't follow. So one must understand followership before one understands leadership. And so I allow myself to be led by my daughters, but I allow myself to be led by my wife. But at the same time, I'm not meek. She doesn't wear the bloody pants in the relationship. There's a mutual consenting relationship, and a mutual decision-making relationship. It wasn't when I was in trauma, she wore the pants. And she was in the masculine. She had to be, because I was so deeply lost in the undying world deep below that someone had to make it. So I'd say all this because the biggest answer to your question is to be the example. And so what I'll do is, around my campfire, I'll set the tone by sharing, especially if I have people that I haven't met before. It's like, cool, share. And anything I say, you can use. I don't have a Chatham House rules. It used to be called in the military. I don't know if you call it that, but a sacred circle, nothing goes outside the circle. I hold the sacred circle, and nothing you say will go outside this circle. But I actually am above that rule. If you wish to use my story, you use my story. All I ask is you respect the story. That's all I ask. And in doing that, what I've found is the level of heart connection to men and when I work with men and women, but just talking about men for the moment, some of them get scared because the level of openness. I don't ask anyone to be vulnerable, because as soon as I ask someone to be vulnerable, what happens in the subconscious mind? It gets defensive. So I ask them to be open. The next question is, well, how do I be open? I said, awesome, great question. Tell me about yourself. And so I'll listen, and then I'll ask another question, and I'll ask a second, third level question. I was doing a leadership workshop for an organization yesterday, and I was talking about questions. One of the leader's most powerful tool is the question, followed by silence. And so I asked the question of this young guy, how you going? He says, yeah, good. I said, what does good mean? Because good is the most nondescript word in the English language besides interesting. Just think about it. And so, and then I turned to the forum. I said, so how many of you would have just accepted good as the answer? Pretty much most people. So anyway, we got talking, and I find out, well, he hadn't seen his wife for a couple of days. So he's good, but if this continues, he's not going to be good. So I'm understanding more about him. Did anyone know that? No one knew that, because our conversation stopped the shallow. And so I won't be intrusive, but I will be deep, and there will be this invitation to come with. And I've been in dark spaces. I was trained for combat, but the scariest stuff I've done is when I've gone inside. I wasn't trained for that. And I wasn't trained to realize that some of the dark stuff that was inside was really, really tenacious, and caused, I didn't realize it existed, but then when I saw how it expressed itself in the outside world and the behaviors that I'd actually wrapped up and unconsciously got involved in, and then the pain that actually that caused on people, particularly those I loved, I went, holy shit. And then you can imagine shame and guilt comes in. So, case in point, Penelope, who's my youngest daughter, when she was 4, I'd moved through post-traumatic stress by this time. But whenever I raised my voice to instill a boundary, she would run to the bedroom, go into the fetal position and rock. And when I very quickly worked out, she was going back to being in utero, because when Kirsty was pregnant with Penelope, I was at the height of my post-traumatic stress. And I was really angry, but I didn't know what anger was, because I just thought it was natural and normal, but I was also emotionally illiterate. So she was used to finding solace next to her mother's heartbeat in the fetal position. Now, you can probably imagine, mate, that as soon as I figured this out, how do you reckon I felt? How would you feel?
Yeah, pretty average.
Very average, exceedingly average. So that's the first thing I had to work out was, hold on, right now I'm feeling shame and I'm feeling guilt because I understand why this is occurring. But if I hold on to the shame and the guilt right now because of the story, then what's going to happen? I'm going to be no help to my daughter whatsoever. So I need to work on the shame and guilt, release that, forgive myself, and then come to where my daughter is. Now, and understanding the journey in the last 4 years, what I'd worked out was that I'd actually become very adept at understanding anger, realizing the energy, knowing how to release it, express it, transmute it. So I was able to use that skill set to assist my daughter evolve in the space of probably 3 months. It took us to evolve her out of that space. And funnily enough, when she was 7 and she'd been pissing her mother off a little bit, and I've been working with Kirst about it, and we've just been letting it go, not letting it go, holding the boundary. But when I say letting it go, it's like not going head on at it, because we wanted her to take responsibility. So instill the boundary, but for me to help her with it, I couldn't help her with it, but she's got to ask. And so finally, after about 3 weeks, she comes to me. She's a 7-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed young girl, and goes, Dad, can I have some help with my anger? I said, yes, gorgeous, of course. And we're walking over the shed to do an anger session together. And I thought, hold on a minute. Like, the emotional literacy of this 7-year-old is beyond most bloody 7-year-olds. If we did a video of that, it could probably help a lot of people. So I asked her, I said, would you mind us doing some video about this? We won't film you getting angry, but just before and after, would you mind? And she says, no. So we did this video, and the last count, I think, had been seen by 170,000 people around the globe. And that was 7 years ago. And I still get messages randomly from people, particularly in the Netherlands or Norway for some reason.
Interesting.
And they just say, can you please thank, I called her Pen because it's my nickname for her, Pen about that video. It just was really, really liberating to see her actually go through it. And her courage to actually be seen gave a gift to so many. And that came because I had the courage to actually own my stuff, do something about it, upskill myself with this new information so that I was there for my family.
That's extremely incredible. And, when you were talking about that with your daughter and her coming to you and asking for help in regards to anger, is like I had extremely I suppose excited. I was extremely excited and I suppose I was feeling I imagine some of the feelings that you were going through at that time is feeling probably excited but also proud of where you had been, but also of where you are, but also of where she has come from as well. And I just think of how how many people are out there now as adults that can't do that, that can't or haven't figured out how empowering it would be to be able to go and ask somebody for some help. And instead of that, living with the pain for so long at that level that is, it hurts. And, so, one of the things that I'm doing now is I left my full-time job just at the start of this year to work closely with our community in the mental health space, and because there's a big gap here. And, and I think that, I see so many people that are just at that edge of just going, I know I need to do something, but I don't know what that is. And I don't know where that I can find that, and I don't know how and who, and all these questions. And it becomes almost another level of stress and frustration and shame that they can't ask the questions. And it's a big struggle. But I think that's I don't know about the Netherlands and why and why they stand out in this space. But I imagine probably they're more comfortable to be able to say thank you. And I think that's probably another story as well, to say thanks for sharing. But there's I think there's so many people that would get value out of seeing that video, and I'm going to make sure that we link it inside of our community as well, because it's, if a 7-year-old can do it, we can all do it, and we can all put some of that stuff aside and ask the questions.
It's Liam, it's a really big point you make. Like, interestingly enough, my message speaks more to women than it does to men. I do more work on average with men than I do with women. Even, corporate leadership stuff that I do for organisations and sporting clubs, etc. It's like still the majority of people there are men. But if you do a personal development workshop, like when I got out of the military, I spent 3 years working with an organisation going around Australia, and it was a 3-day personal development workshop we ran pretty much every second weekend. And on average, it was 80% women in the crowd. But the point is, like, and I was actually talking to, I tuned into, or was asked to speak last night at a men's group over in New Zealand virtually. I got zoomed in. And we were actually talking about this specific thing. There is actually so much help available, yet and a lot of people will say the issue is money and resources. It's not money and resources at all. There's a number of competing factors. Firstly, a man's ego is quite strong, and pride is actually a very low vibrating emotion because it's about attachment. And one of the issues with attachment is that their identity will be attached to something. And one of the biggest things that's identified is the need to be self-sufficient. And when I say self-sufficient, I'm not talking a beautiful, organic, sovereign being who's one with nature, one with everything, and just stands on his own 2 feet in a beautiful, balanced way. I'm talking about a person who's dogmatically unable to receive, unable to actually allow himself to open up to receive support. And I don't know if you ever saw the show Man Up by Gus Worland. He did a series of 4.
Went in with schools and things like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Well, I was speaking at the same event he was, and he had his psychological support team out of Griffith University speak as well. And what they found was 64% of men who were taking their own life had already put their hand up. Now, I'm a big one to question statistics. Like, I ask the second, third level questions when statistics have been asked. But the point about that is it was twofold. Firstly, a lot of men don't find the help that resonates with them first time around, and so they stop. And I'll often get someone who's been through the psychiatric approach, the psychological, they've gone to counsellors, and they'll turn up like exhausted on my doorstep. And I'll know that literally they're looking at me as their last hope. I don't know how many blokes turn up to my campfire with a boot already packed. And that is just to go away from their family, but actually never come back, like, in life. And it's really empowering when they actually around the campfire and they admit, hey, listen, I came with my boot packed, because they're actually allowing themselves to drop deep down into where they are. They're owning where they are, and we can build it from there. But the point there is that I keep saying to people, and if it's like a podcast, you don't listen to a podcast you don't like. You listen to a podcast that you get something from, but you might have to go through a whole suite of different podcasts to find that. So, find someone that you resonate with. And no, like the biomedical approach has flaws. It has deep flaws. And if you go down that approach, you have to realize the ramifications. It's not insurmountable, and it works for some people. But for a lot of people, it doesn't work. And just because it doesn't work doesn't mean to say you're broken. Matter of fact, no one's broken. This is the whole misnomer about the paradigm about mental health. 80% of mental health issues are actually personal leadership issues. We've just never been taught it this way. And we've been conditioned to believe mental health is a disease that infects you. It's not. It's the whole mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual byproduct of being out of balance. So when I, at a subconscious level, listen to the words I use because they're really, really calculated. At a subconscious level, I chose to develop post-traumatic stress upon returning home from Iraq. Now, I chose that at a subconscious level, not a conscious level. It wasn't a conscious thought going, yeah, give me a beer and give me post-traumatic stress. It's all good. No, it wasn't like that. It was at a subconscious level because I knew that my path in life was going way left. And my path in life was going on to become a general. That's the way the military had me set up. That's the way I thought I was meant to be set up. That's the way I was hard charging. I didn't realize that's not what I was meant to be doing, because I just thought that that's what society told me to do. That's all the measures of success, which are right, aren't they? No, they weren't my measures of success, because I'd never actually had the ability to answer my own true question. Who am I and what do I truly want? Therefore, what is success to me? And until I sat and answered those questions, then I could go, whoa, I was going way off track. I didn't even see that. So the point about this is that I was trying to be a ballerina doing a pirouette for way too long. And I've done a bit of yoga in my life, but I give you the big tip. To see me doing a bit of ballet and trying to do a pirouette, it's a funny experience. And of course I'm going to fall over in exhaustion. And that's what we do with any form of adverse mental condition. Matter of fact, First Nation people say adverse mental conditions are a spiritual awakening waiting to happen. In whatever spiritual context you use, it does not matter. You could be a deep Christian. Awesome. Use your bedrock and understand. Get really deep on Christianity if you're going to do it. I recommend you go far deeper than just going to church at 9:30 on a Sunday, because you ain't going to hit what you've got to find in that modality to understand spirit. It is rich. It is really rich. I had an Anglican father, but I'll tell you what, I know so much more about Christianity now than I ever did as a son of a preacher man. And there is so much deep in the esoteric or the internal. The church is called the Church of John as opposed to the external exoteric Church of Peter. But the Church of John teaches so much about the unification of the soul. And one must say to sanctify before illumination. In other words, cleanse, purify before I become illuminated, before these things pop into my mind. So there's deep richness to that Buddhism. It's just such a beautiful middle path. Taoism teaches an incredible place of oneness. There's so many different modalities to understand from it. And that's just a religious context. And we go spirituality, where we go beyond that architecture that someone else has given to us through a lifetime, which has then been synthesized by a disciple and put into a series of constructs for people to follow. And we go into that time with Luther with the Protestant Reformation, giving you and saying all you need is God and the Bible. So what he's basically saying is you can find the divine great spirit in the indigenous language, and you can find it yourself. And the problem is a lot of people didn't know how to read the Bible, so probably sent up shit creek, but without a paddle. But the whole point is that there is so much to these journeys into the darkness. And this is the thing. Darkness is known as evil. That's bullshit. It's not. Darkness is dark. Darkness is where chaos resides. Chaos is not evil. You formed from chaos. In the womb, you were in darkness and you formed from chaos. And that's how you morphed into life, where structure came. And structure is the masculine principle. Feminine is the dissolving, the fluidity, the dark, beautiful, creative, chaotic energies. Whereas the masculine takes that, seeds that, impregnates that, and then form comes. So this dark night of the soul, there's so many people are having right now because, yes, adverse mental condition rates are going through the roof. And so are a number of psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors on the streets. Yeah, and they're just going together like this. So in other words, it's not a money or a resource issue. It's a paradigm issue. You're not broken is the first thing to understand. You are a beautiful being which has a reason to be on the planet or you wouldn't be here. But it's my job to find my reason. So Dad says, there's your God, there's my God, but you got to go and find your own. He's saying to me, James, stand up. Stop sitting on the couch. Stop feeling bad, like sorry for yourself. You've got everything it takes. I know you don't understand that right now, but just take a step. And so, yeah, the fourth best day of my life's been hit by a roadside bomb. Fourth best, hands down. Because I needed the kick in the ball sack to wake up to my priorities in life and realize I was going like that. Third best night of my life, I was bathing my 2-year-old daughter, Abigail, who's now 17. And we're having fun. And back then, that didn't really happen that much because my family are pretty much walking on eggshells because there was like a pressure cooker in the house. And that was me. Anyway, Kirsty yells out dinner time. And I said to Abs, can you just put the toys in the basket? She did what any 2-year-old having fun with Dad would do in that moment. Completely disregard Dad's instructions. Man, I went from 0 to 1,000 degrees Celsius like that. I had to do everything just to put the basket down and leave the room and walk past Kirsty before I did something I truly regret. And I walked past and I said, you go and deal with that fucking kid. I can't. My daughter better. Now, interestingly enough, that night I went and straight away I went and stood in front of the mirror and I looked at myself and I said, dude, who the hell are you? You're not a husband. You're not a father. You're not a man. You're nothing. You are seriously, you can take bullets and you can take bombs. You can't even bath your own 2-year-old daughter. And that was the biggest wake-up call because when I turned around from that mirror experience there and the silhouetted on the door was Kirsty waiting for the next chat, which was, I can't keep doing this. Like, we either get your help or I'm taking the girls and I'm leaving. And I said, listen, I don't actually know. I don't know what's wrong. I can't fix it. And that was one of my biggest issues. I was a fix-it type guy. Bring me the problem. I was a combat commander. I was thinking at 60 kilometers an hour like this. Lots of stuff going, bing, 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 bing. And I was good. But I'm inside and it's all going bing, 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 bing. And like I'm like a deer in spotlights. I've got no idea. And every step I take seems to just bring turbulence to the world, more turmoil. And so here I am just completely weighed down by this experience and not seeing truth, not seeing that the only reason why this was happening was because everything that I believed in life needed to cascade upon itself to collapse because it wasn't who I was. It's who I believed everyone else wanted me to be. And I needed external validation and all that for so long. It was who I was, wasn't it? Until I had this moment in time where everything collapses. And Kirsty puts it all on the table for me. And she said this word. She said, I will be there and I will support you as long as you get help. If not, I'll love you to my dying day, but I won't be here. And I said, my commitment to us, gorgeous, is that I will keep making a step. I'll keep stepping, but I can't guarantee the direction of that step. And sure enough, now sometimes I'd have a step forward and then 10 steps backwards. And it was after I put my hand up that I went suicidal because I started to realize what I'd done. And that weight of shame and guilt got heavier and heavier and heavier. And it got to the point where I just went, I'm bringing too much pain. But again, that seed of my father showed me the light, showed me the door. And then I realized also that I was skilled enough to actually deal with this stuff by this stage. And so I went through the process. Shame and guilt became my friend. They were indicators to where the dragons lay within the caves, and the caves became my battlefields and stomping grounds for a long time until I lassoed my dragon. And now, holy cow, like the passion and the power I feel because of the experience is just next level. Can't explain it.
It's amazing how one word or one sentence at one particular part of life that at that point, when was 8 years old when your dad mentioned that this is my God, and at that one particular point, like you said, it's just words, but how impactful that can be. And if I think there's a whoever's listening to this, it's probably like me going, all right, I just need to now find that. When was that pivotal moment before things get really, really bad? Let me jot down all the words and all the phrases that people I admire have said when I was a kid, because I might be able to detour around some of the traumatic moments, but I don't. That's not the purpose of them. I suppose this, we're looking to, those things will come to us when it's the right time, and and I think a lot of these experiences that we all go through are there for us. And I think that's the other thing too, is a lot of people think these are happening to us. instead of for us. And so, that's what I really think it's what you're doing is so impactful, because, you've gone through that depth of pain and suffering, and turned it into, even though there was so many different elements that were saying, just, stop. And however, you converted those into, this is all for me. This is all for a purpose. This is all for something bigger than me. And, one of the things you mentioned at the start was that you've got a big heart. And, so a question that's been sort of sitting with me since you've been talking is that a burden as well?
Has been. Yeah, it has been. The burden came when I didn't fully understand it. And I would use it for the satisfaction of those external to me. So I'd be in service, and being in service, I would weigh my shoulders full of responsibility to make sure I got it right, because I had the issue with perfectionism is the shadow side of perfectionism is judgment. And I have a deep desire for mastery, and mastery is the balanced perfectionist who does so calculatedly, consciously. But I was unconscious and I didn't understand any of the stuff that I now know. And I was a perfectionist who had an extreme self-judgment. So nothing I could do for the people that I love was right. And some stuff happened in my family when I was younger, and I didn't know about it, but I felt it. And it was to do with my sister, and I felt that I couldn't protect my sister. And that then flowed onto a decision that I made at a subconscious level about myself and my relationship with women, and which meant that, the beautiful women in my life would always suffer pain, and that pain would be because of me and my inadequacies. And it wasn't until I dug that up after an experience in 2016 and really, really pulled it up. And I went back to my father and the example I saw from my father, and then the decision that I made about that example. There's a lot of people forget inner child stuff. A lot of people think that when we do inner child stuff, we just blame our parents. It's actually, our parents are just, I think you were leading to this before, Liam, but they're the situation and circumstance and event of people that come into our life to assist us on the life journey. And they just happen to be really, really close to us. And so we see them so often and so much. And yes, there is a lot that flows through the bloodline. North American Indians will make a decision in this moment thinking about 7 generations into the future, because they know it goes into that fast. And epigenetics is demonstrating also the DNA correlation between trauma and emotional wounding, et cetera, too. So we know it comes through the bloodline, but it's not just that, because our genetics can actually be turned on and off like light switches too, that are very much environmentally conditioned. So it's not nature versus nurture, but it's a mixture of both. And so when I looked at my father, he was an incredible individual who was always out helping people. So I actually developed an absent father syndrome. Why? My father loved me, but I did develop an absent father syndrome because I'd often wake up in the morning, Dad wasn't there. Why? He was in a bloody road accident, putting bodies in body bags, and then being with the people that had experienced the cleanup of that in police and emergency services, and being there for them. What an amazing man. But here I am, a young man wanting to prove himself to my father. There's no father around for me to prove to. So I had this constant need for this external validation and recognition. And then I went into the military, for crying out loud. The military, is an epic environment to be there for external recognition and validation. Just look at the rank of the medals, coming up on Anzac Day. So it's right in our face. But when I was able to turn that around and begin self-acknowledgement and self-measuring, and a grounded sense of self-confidence laced with and embedded in by humility. The etymology or the genesis of the word humility comes from the Latin humus, which means ground, which is all about a grounding energy. So until I could do that, my big beating heart got into a lot of trouble. And I didn't understand why I'd try and help and it'd be thrown back in my face. Well, did I actually ask if they wanted help in the first place? Or was I projecting my own belief that I had a need to be needed? Was I projecting that onto them so that then exacerbated their situation and they just threw it back in my face? And then what did I do? I transferred that into a decision about myself, which was, there you go, I'm inadequate. I can't help these people. No one wants my help. Why don't they want my help? I'm bad. I'm just all spiral down. until realizing that, cool, the first thing to do if you want to help someone is to ask them, do they actually want help? Such a simple question and understanding. But I've sat with people, on hillsides, and I've gone, dude, so you're thinking about putting a 12 gauge through your heart? Yep. So you got to choose life or death, my brother. Now let's just roll this out. If you kill yourself, then cool, I'll come to the funeral. And yep, your son and your daughter will be there. Your ex-wife will be there. Yep, she'll be feeling varying things. Mum and dad will be there as well. And that's what's going to happen. And no, man, I can't help you. I'll go to your funeral. There's nothing I can do. You'll kill yourself. There's nothing I can do for you. If you choose life, I'll stand by you. I'll be there with you. I understand from my own experience how it is to be in this choice point. I don't know your exact situation because you're an individual going through your own situation. But what I can tell you is that after being there, I'm no longer there, and my life is amazing. And I will walk with you on that path. I can't help you. I can't do it for you, and it's not my job. And when you pull away from me in shame and guilt, I will sit there and I will not talk to you until you reach back out to me. But I will always have my phone open to you. I will always be there when you need me. And there's beauty to that. And I don't know how many mates of mine, a few mates from Iraq who know what I've done and what I do for the last, 12 years. A couple of them have taken their life in recent times. And I grieve. I'm a really good griever right now because lots of men I know, lots of people I know have taken their own life. And it's not my job to save anyone. It's my job to have a heart that can be there for them if they choose the other path. And that's why it took me a long time to be able to openly say I've never had a relapse of post-traumatic stress. Doesn't mean to say I haven't had black days, but I know what the black day is about. I actually celebrate a black day now because I know I'm actually going through a creative process. But it took me a long time to be able to stand in joy in front of a crowd of pained people, because I felt guilty and ashamed until I realized, well, they're feeling crap. They're feeling a lot of guilt and shame. So why am I standing here just lamenting in their own wounds? Why am I in that? They don't need that right now. Someone in anger does not need to be met by anger. They need to be met by compassion and understanding because they need to be heard. Anger is about voicing. It's about moving energy. Someone in sadness doesn't need someone else to be just crying with. They just need an open heart. They need comfort. They need reassurance. Someone in fear doesn't need another scared mongrel. Matter of fact, that's a great bloody recipe for disaster. Just look at the last 3 years, for crying out loud. What we need is, in that moment, you need confidence and surety. You need the rock. You need the balance. And that's what I've realized. Being big-hearted actually is the call to do.
It's definitely not a burden. It's something that has been you've been called to do, like you say, which is for people who have, well, I mean, for me in particular, that sometimes has been through some of those conversations and with people who are at the what they feel is the end of their life, that it's extremely challenging and adds so much weight to the shoulders. However, I think you articulated it way better than I ever could. But that constant being available and being supportive can only work if you too have your own, for lack of a better way to put it, is have at least some of the shit together to be able to be grounded, to be able to understand that this is a part of their journey, that they have somehow subconsciously chosen to involve you in that and allow you into their space, which is part of the processing that I've gone through over the years in this space is that's not necessarily a burden. That's, if anything, it's a privilege to be, even subconsciously be accepted into someone's darkest moments, into their cave with the dragon, to be able to, just, hey, can you just walk with me just this little bit down this path? If it doesn't continue because they find another way, then, that's fine too. It's their journey. And, and for what we do inside the Australian Dads Network is definitely about, acknowledging that open space, but also that we're here to walk with the journey with you. But it's your path to tread. and sometimes, with the community that we've got, where there's, we've got great granddads in there. We've got granddads with, the oldest guy is 74 years of age. I say it all the time. Keith from Kalgoorlie, he's a legend. He's in the men's mental health space as well. Still supporting guys, still working hard. The bonus of having those crew around you, and you do a lot of this stuff around the campfires and supporting community is that some of those people that have been down there, and this is the way that I try to put it anyway, is that they're not going to clear the path for you. They're not going to be the people to walk on that path in front of you and whatnot, but they can point out beside you some of those obstacles and maybe give you some tips and strategies on how to maybe get around that rock, or what has worked for them. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. It's your choice to take the advice and work and walk around the rock or do something different. But at the end of the day, it's yours. It's your path. And yeah, so that's, I suppose, just a little aside to that conversation. But
you raise a great point though, Liam, and that, like, Keith from Kalgoorlie is the consummate elder.
Mm-hmm.
And in a society which is elderless now, because you don't become elder by virtue of age, you become an elder by virtue of appointment by the tribe, because of the life experience that you have and the way you live it. So then the wisdom. But remembering the elder is that one step removed from the tribe too. They're no longer in the warrior council and the chieftain's council. They are one step removed. So they have that objectivity. And the beauty of someone like Keith in your circle with that objectivity given from love, obviously, because you wouldn't speak to him without him, having a big, massive heart, is that precision that an elder can speak with, like calling it as it is. But it's the gift. Like, an elder gives a gift. They don't instruct. An elder gives the gift. And it's our then responsibility, as you're saying, to pick that gift up from the elder and bring it into our life and understand. And the only way you'll do it is by sealing the bond. I mean, the beautiful scene of Avatar is when at the conclusion of Jake Sully's initiation by Natiri, interestingly enough, he's initiated by the feminine. He's not by Sute. He's not initiated by Sute. Matter of fact, he's in competition with Sute, who's supposedly going to become the chief. So he gets initiated by the feminine, and the feminine takes him through this journey of everything, understanding life in only the way the feminine can do. But the final thing is he has to lasso the Eklan, and then she comes and pushes him off by saying, you've got the first flight seals the bond. So you've got to take this gift from the elder, and then you've got to do your first flight with it, because it's only in flying. If you remember the scene, he's charging down, and the flight's not good, man. He's heading to the bottom. And it's and then he's fighting until he stops fighting. That's when all of a sudden it levels out. Yeah. And so that's the moment in time when you're fighting, you stop fighting, and all of a sudden things level out, and the gift of the elder can settle. It's don't fight the gift, surrender to the gift. Because the gift has an energy from that wisdom which has been lived before. Let that gift guide you. Let it just really sit in it. Last night with the Maori group, I had the honor of having two elders close the circle. And I don't speak Maori. It's not a tongue of mine. I know a couple of words. I just sat there, closed my eyes, and felt the power in these men's voice, these elders' voice. And it was moving me to tears, just because, not sadness, just deep honor, gratitude, respect that these men have. And I didn't need to understand a single word. I did not need, because my consciousness is able to absorb the gift without word, and my daughter Abby, who just works, she's off working at a retail outlet at the moment, was talking yesterday about a conversation she had with a Japanese lady that didn't involve English. And they had a beautiful time, and actually it was the number one sale for the day, because the lady just really appreciated Abby. And she said, I was listening to a comedian the other day, and the comedian was saying that you go over to Asia and you say one word, hello, to an Asian, and they celebrate you. They laugh, they clap, they just go ballistic. They come to Australia, they cock up a whole sentence, and you just go, you bloody Asian, can't even speak English. Why don't you go home to your own country? Isn't it fascinating? The paradox. Yeah. And so she took this to heart, and she's having this beautiful conversation with this Japanese lady, and They both walked out celebrating the experience. We don't necessarily need the words. We just need to have that time to surrender to the experience.
Perfect. I have just a couple more things that I just wanted to put your way for you to dive into as deep as you want. But I can't remember exactly where I heard this, but it's basically, it was titled The Three Givens of Life: Pain, Uncertainty, and Constant Work. My question is, do you agree?
No and yes, because the paradigm approach life will mean how I receive pain, uncertainty, and constant work. I don't work. I follow my passion, and my passion is being of service, not in service, which finds me being in exchanges of focused energy quite a lot. I don't do business because business just substitute the I and throw the Y and you just get busyness. It's like I was smiling at you before saying, you must be a busy man, blah, 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 and making all these assumptions. I'm here because I value you, and therefore this is my gift to the world. You actually allowing me to live my life purpose. And I am deeply grateful for you reaching out, contacting me again and saying, hey, can we connect? Which is why I go to the point about tenacity and resolve. Tenacity and resolve done from a place of the heart just become a byproduct of being, which takes us beyond resilience. I go beyond resilience when I no longer have an adversary. So work doesn't become my adversary. It's not just the reason why I get coin. Now, I know you're over in the West and you're in a place where, lots of statistics are actually covered up by the mines. I understand that, been there, done that. Just because they're about the coin, and that then transfers over to predominantly men, but also the women that are involved in this industry as well. And it becomes a mindset and goes into collective consciousness that their value is directly related to their doing. No, our value is in our being, not our doing. And in expressing our being, then the doing expresses this value. It's an expression of the value. It isn't the value itself. So pain happens like the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism is really interesting. The first noble truth is that all life is suffering. When I first heard that, I said, I hate Buddhism. Don't want to do anything with it. So then I read the second noble truth. Suffering is a human condition. Really, I really don't like Buddhism. Buddhism sucks. And this suffering is called this word dukkha. D-U-K-K-H-A, I think it is. And it says dukkha is a human condition. It's caused by craving and aversion. This is the third noble truth. Dukkha is caused by attachment, by craving or aversion. And if you look at it, I can say pain is a given, but the suffering, which is caused by attachment to some story associated with the pain, means that it then is prolonged in the story, gathers momentum, gathers power within the conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious mind, and then all suddenly becomes my identity. Now, I've gone through the series of stages. I identified myself as the wounded soldier, the one in post-traumatic stress. Then I went through a stage of letting that go and becoming identified as the person who got over post-traumatic stress. And then I actually came to a place, and this was the funniest of the places, it was the transition between letting completely go of that post-traumatic stress story. And people ask me, do I agree with D, disorder, being on the end of it? I don't care, because I don't do labels. A label can help for a moment, but as soon as you identify with the label, it now has you. And so if I identify with the pain, then it has me. If I witness the pain, then I can learn from it. And anyone actually knows, if you go down a sexuality understanding, the pleasure and pain barrier, it's exceptionally fine. You look at the whole bondage, sadism, masochism stream of sexuality and the underworld, because it's often kept in the underworld. And the reason why it's kept in the underworld is because the energy is misunderstood, and it's all in the shadow of the psyche. So but they know themselves, like Japanese rope bondage and rope tying, they take the person in the pain, but it's the thing is in the pain they're finding pleasure. It's a great podcast by a guy called Alan Watts. If you've ever followed Alan Watts, he's an amazing guy. He talks specifically about this pleasure and pain thing. There'd be a recommendation to the listeners, but it's your association with pain which causes it. And again, that's your paradigm. So if you've got a victim consciousness, pain will rule. Well, it's not just pain that will rule your life. Suffering will rule your life. Uncertainty is a fascinating thing. Once you look at uncertainty and you become comfortable in it, well, you see that chaos actually reigns, and you start to salivate in the chaos. and you become like the eye of the storm. The storm's around you, and you gain stillness. If you want to practice this, people be flying in and out of Karratha in light planes. And so when the plane's buffeting all over by the thermals, go into meditation and just get really deeply still, and your whole body will be moving. But see if you can find that point of stillness. And it's really fascinating what happens in that moment. Most uncertainty is a paradigm of disconnection from something greater than self. You better stop there, others will be talking forever. That's a great question, brother.
I think it's turning into a long form podcast. We'll have to light a campfire in the yarn barn. Which is not a bad thing. Well, hey, I think we've touched on a lot, but I think, like what you've explained a number of times is that, this conversation hasn't been disjointed. Everything has been connected in some way. And I said this to you earlier is I don't necessarily have a script at all regarding these podcasts. I really want to treat them as us just having a coffee or whatever and a chat. And the reason why I do that is because in order to have a good chat, there needs to be that level of connection and needs to be that level of trust in the conversation, and it'll either go really well or it won't.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone else can be the judge of how it went, but I think it went fantastic, and I really I did have a blank page to start with, but now it's consumed with notes. And you probably can't see that, it's all blurry, but it's consumed with plenty of notes, which I'll go back to as I mentioned earlier as well. I think one of the things that I would like to maybe leave this with, if you could, is for our listeners are mostly dads. For those dads out there that have listened to the whole episode, whether it's in one go or across their work week, but for those guys where it's resonated, or at least something in this has resonated with them internally, where they can feel that through your words, like the way I felt this conversation, deeper into the belly is, if it's sitting with them and now they're like, so where do I go? Who do I speak to? What do you think is that, we've sort of covered a little bit of this, but, where would you say to those guys to go? Where would you say to them to follow some of this moving forward, so that they can take that next step?
First question to them, are they boots and all in? Do they dive in the deep end? Or do they need to walk into the shallow end and then move down? Just own what it is. It's all good. Either way, it's good. The second one is, when you open up to receive help, the universe has this astounding way of presenting it there. So lots of people don't think there's any help. It's actually right there. We just got to open our eyes to it. And I know in that dark time, the eyes are the last thing that we want to open. But if we can just all of a sudden bring them open for a little bit, we're going to find, like Kirsty sat me down and said, there's this guy I want you to hear. He's a great Australian bloke. I think you'll resonate with him. She dragged my ass to the Sydney Masonic Centre for a 3-day emotional intelligence workshop. And I was in the military. And she said, leave your baggage behind. And I said, what emotional? I don't have any emotional baggage. And I listened to this guy, and it was as if he'd been in my lounge room for the last 12 months. He resonated that much with me. And I knew that in that moment that I needed to get help from him. So the first thing is to put our hands up, to have the courage. And this is the biggest thing. I understand. It's the biggest courageous thing we can do, is to reach up and say, right, I'm not feeling great and I really would like some help. And then know that for some time, we haven't been feeling great and we've been refusing help. So the first step might be wonky. We might not get the help that we need or that we want, or it might not come in the way we're expecting it. The thing is to just take that next step as well. The second step is almost more important than the first, because it then demonstrates to you that you're actually committed to yourself. And so, cool. Have a look, this forum, brilliant. If you've got a local men's group, cool. It might be the first step. I actually personally believe that modern men's movement needs to die because they're harboring a lot of victim consciousness, but that's okay. It's the first step for a lot of people, and it's a step that they need to go down. But reach out and have the courage to go, I want to now experience something other than what I've got now. And I set the intention that I can allow myself to know what it is to be worthy enough to live a very good life. And in that moment, then go right and set that commitment to yourself. And now be open for the universe to respond, because it will. And then when you see it, go with it. It's like that train of opportunity passing you by, and you sat down on the bench seat on the station and you watched it go by and you went, bugger, jump on this time. And sure, you might miss it, but then pick yourself up, get back off the tracks, get back on the platform, wait for the next one, get on that one. And this journey is one that I started for everyone else. I started for my daughters initially because I couldn't love my wife. We'd been married, I don't know, by that stage about 12 years or so. I couldn't love my wife. I just had too much shame and guilt. So I did it for my daughters. And then after about 3 months, I realized who I was actually doing it for, and that was myself. And from that moment on, the commitments weren't to them, but they initially needed to be to them because I just had such a low opinion of my own self-worth. But then it started to shift, and I started to realize, cool, I'll just do it for myself, one step. And I started to see the effect it had on everyone else around me. And so that level of self-commitment, try a psychologist. If it doesn't work with you, reach out. There's so many stuff online. Just Google men's work, whatever. Kind out loud, just link up with or follow my stuff. I throw a lot of stuff on Facebook just talking about these different aspects. James Greenshields on Facebook, just follow it. But there's so many people out there that are now rising out of the darkness and actually shining the light. Just set the intention and take that second step so that you can keep going.
Awesome. That alone will help a bunch of people, and definitely agree with following your work online. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I haven't asked? That's the last question.
No, mate. No. You've asked everything. Your questions have been awesome. I've actually really enjoyed this conversation.
I appreciate it, and as have I. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate your time. I'm grateful for the opportunity to listen. I've learnt a bunch, and I feel like I'm probably going to end up reaching out to you and asking you more questions after this as well, in some form or another.
That's one thing, I suppose, is that people listen to podcasts and they have questions and they don't do anything about it. My name is James Greenshields. You can find me on Facebook. You can find my website, jamesgreenshields.com. Ask the question. Like if Liam's put this out here because of, his big heart and what he's doing for you guys. So one of the easiest things you can do, if you've got a question, is to reach out to either of us. And that's the way that questions start to be answered. Matter of fact, that could be your first step. It could just be having the courage to go, I just heard this podcast, wonder if I've got a question of either of these guys, maybe I just reach out and ask, and holy cow, just watch how the universe supports you.
100%. Awesome. Thanks, James. Appreciate your time. And we'll talk again soon, no doubt.
Thanks, brother. Bye.